The world doesn't need more men trying to look powerful. Most men are stuck in performance. Polished suits, perfect routines, surface-level confidence. But underneath, insecurity, confusion, a constant hunger to prove themselves. Carl Jung saw through it all. He believed that a man isn't powerful until he confronts his darkness, his shadow, and forges purpose through discipline, not motivation, not charm, but a ruthless commitment to self-honesty. This video isn't about being alpha. It's not a list of productivity hacks or shallow affirmations. It's about something ancient, something sacred, the inner evolution of a man who refuses to live on autopilot and instead begins the journey of individuation. The superior man isn't better than others. He's better than his former self. So if you've ever felt that quiet urge, that pull towards something deeper, more real, more true, then this isn't just a video. It's a message meant for you. Stay until the end, and you'll understand why this path is as dangerous as it is divine. Being a superior man has nothing to do with status, power, or public image. Not in Jung's eyes. To him, superiority isn't about climbing over others. It's about diving deep within yourself and confronting what most people spend their lives avoiding, the unconscious. The superior man is the one who dares to face his shadow, not the one who polishes his mask. He understands that self-mastery is far more important than social dominance. He's not trying to be liked, he's trying to be whole. This man doesn't fear his flaws. He studies them. He doesn't repress his darkness. He integrates it. That's Jung's model of strength. The man who's aware of his contradictions and isn't ruled by them. He doesn't react unconsciously. He responds with clarity. That's what makes him dangerous. But disciplined. You see, most men are still stuck in roles: father, provider, achiever, without ever asking, who am I beneath all of that? Jung would argue that a man becomes superior the moment he begins to dismantle the social costume and examine the creature underneath. And this is no weekend retreat or one-time epiphany. It's a lifelong confrontation with inner chaos, a commitment to psychological growth that most avoid. Because looking within, it's terrifying. It means losing control. And yet, paradoxically, it's the only way to gain real control, not over the world, but over your own reactions, desires, wounds, and compulsions. That's the battlefield. And Jung believed it was sacred. This internal journey transforms the way a man leads, loves, and lives. A Jungian superior man is not obsessed with perfection. He's obsessed with truth. He doesn't want to appear strong. He wants to be strong emotionally, spiritually, psychologically. He doesn't seek external validation. He listens to his inner voice, even when it tells him hard truths. He understands that unexamined success is just polished failure. So, instead of building his life on performance, he builds it on purpose. That shift alone sets him apart, not as better than others, but as more whole than before. And the truth is, most men never get there. They chase money, women, or achievements, trying to fill a void they don't even fully understand. But Jung says, the void isn't out there. It's in here. Until you explore it, name it, and hold it, it owns you. The superior man knows this. He stops running. He turns around and asks, what have I been trying not to feel? That's where the real work begins. And ironically, the moment you stop performing is when you finally become powerful. Quietly, internally, unshakably. But of course, the journey doesn't stop at self-awareness. In fact, Jung would say that's just the first initiation. Because once you face the shadow, something else has to take the lead. And this brings us to the second trait that shapes a truly superior man, one that might surprise you. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is the firewood. Jung understood that inner transformation doesn't come from bursts of inspiration. It comes from routine confrontation with the parts of yourself you'd rather avoid. The superior man knows this. He doesn't wait to feel ready before acting. He acts because he's committed to a principle, a purpose, or a vow, not a mood. Discipline, in Jungian psychology, isn't about repression or rigidity. It's about voluntary responsibility. The mature man doesn't run from effort. He welcomes it as sacred training. Discipline sharpens his soul the way a blade sharpens through resistance. And what most people call suffering, he sees as structure. That's the shift. Jung might say that without discipline, a man becomes a slave to his complexes. Think about it. Without discipline, you're pulled by every desire, swayed by every distraction, crushed by every insecurity. You react to life instead of creating it. But with discipline, you become intentional. You wake up early not just to be productive, but to reclaim your mind before the world steals it. You keep commitments to yourself because they become your spine. A superior man is not disciplined because it's trendy. He's disciplined because without it, his darker impulses would take the wheel. And trust me, they want to. The shadow is always waiting. Discipline is what keeps it in check, or better, in harmony. Let's get practical. What does this look like? It means setting non-negotiables for your soul. Reading something uncomfortable every day. Reflecting in silence. No phone, no music. Just you and your psyche. Writing down your projections, triggers, and judgments before they rot into bitterness. Exercising not for image, but to prove you still govern your own body. Saying no to people-pleasing. Saying yes to solitude. Holding space for grief. These are disciplines that don't just optimize your life. They align it with truth. And the superior man is relentlessly aligned with truth, even when it burns. There's something quietly powerful about a man who honors discipline. Not to perform, not to punish, but to prepare. He doesn't talk about what he's going to do. He does it, repeatedly, without applause. Because his rewards are internal. His peace comes from knowing, I showed up for myself today. That alone makes him different. That alone makes him dangerous, not to others, but to the forces that once controlled him. Jung saw this as individuation in action, a slow forging of the self through friction. And it's not always sexy, but it's always sacred. And yet, discipline alone isn't the end goal. It's the structure. But what gives it direction? What prevents it from becoming cold, mechanical, or obsessive? That's where something deeper steps in, a compass that orients every action toward something meaningful. And that, precisely, is where we turn next. Purpose is not a slogan. It's not a career. It's not a Pinterest quote or some morning affirmation. Purpose, in Jungian terms, is a call, a deep pull from the self, the part of you that's larger than the ego and more ancient than your personal story. It whispers, it haunts, it seduces, and it doesn't care about your convenience. A man who is truly superior, not by status, but by soul, is someone who answers that call, even when it terrifies him. Jung believed that the psyche is always seeking wholeness. That seeking is purpose. It's not always glamorous. Sometimes it means walking away from what's secure. Sometimes it means breaking patterns your family clings to. But for the man who has tasted it, there's no going back. He'd rather be broke and aligned than rich and numb. Purpose isn't always clear at first. In fact, it usually shows up as pain, a sense that something's missing, something's off. Maybe you've felt that. That quiet emptiness, even when things look fine on the outside. That's not a defect. That's the beginning. Jung would say it's the self trying to get your attention, like a dream you can't shake. The superior man doesn't ignore it. He sits with it. He asks questions that scare most people. Why am I here? What am I pretending not to know? He doesn't need instant answers. He just needs to stay in the tension long enough to let meaning emerge. Because it always does, if you're honest. And once purpose begins to emerge, everything else starts to rearrange. Relationships shift. Goals evolve. Habits change. You no longer tolerate what you used to. Not because you're better, but because you're clearer. The man of purpose stops negotiating with what drains him. He no longer flirts with distractions. He trims his life down to the essentials, the sacred, the aligned. People might say he's intense, and they're right. But that intensity is devotion. It's focus. It's the refusal to waste time pretending. When a man walks in purpose, you can feel it before he even speaks. He radiates a kind of stillness. He doesn't need to dominate the room. He is the room. Let's be real. Purpose isn't always grand. Sometimes it means mentoring one young man who reminds you of yourself. Sometimes it means creating something no one will understand until after you're gone. Purpose doesn't need applause. It needs fidelity. The superior man understands this. He knows that his deepest responsibility isn't to impress others, but to embody the mission that only he can fulfill, even if it's quiet, even if it's misunderstood. Because at the end of the day, it's not about scale, it's about alignment. And when a man is aligned, even his silence speaks. Still, even with shadow work, discipline, and purpose, there's a piece that many miss, and without it, the whole structure can collapse. Jung warned that when a man disconnects from this next element, he risks falling into arrogance or burnout. So what is it? What balances power with humility, drive with reflection? What makes a man truly dangerous, but deeply grounded? Humility isn't weakness. It's not modesty for show. or some passive acceptance of being less than. No, humility, in Jungian terms, is power that refuses to posture. It's grounded awareness of one's limitations and one's potential. The superior man doesn't walk around announcing how humble he is. He doesn't need to. His humility shows up in how he listens, how he pauses before reacting, how he honors silence as much as speech. Jung believed that without humility, the ego would hijack the entire individuation process. A man could become spiritually inflated, thinking he's enlightened while acting like a tyrant. True humility is the antidote. It keeps a man rooted, even as he rises. But let's be honest, humility is rare, especially among men who've achieved something. It's easy to become addicted to identity, to start believing your own myth. Titles, praise, followers. They're seductive and they distort. Jung called this the danger of identification, when a man mistakes his role for his self. The superior man resists this trap, not because he's immune to ego, but because he studies it. He keeps his shadow close enough to stay honest. He remembers that no matter how evolved he becomes, there's always more work to do, more truth to uncover, more blind spots to confront. That's humility, not thinking less of yourself, but knowing you're not done yet. Practically, humility looks like asking for feedback from people who'll tell you the truth. It's admitting when you were wrong without spiraling into shame or defensiveness. It's owning your ignorance in certain areas and staying teachable. It's knowing when to lead and when to follow. It's being strong enough to say, I don't know, and still show up. In relationships, humility changes everything. You stop trying to win arguments and start trying to understand. You become more interested in connection than control. And that is where intimacy begins. Not just with others, but with life itself. What makes this so powerful is that humility gives space for something larger to move through you. When you're not obsessed with being impressive, you become a vessel for something deeper. Insight, creativity, compassion. Even the humanist Jung believed that this openness was essential for transformation. The superior man isn't obsessed with becoming a god. He's trying to become real. And to do that, he must bow to something beyond himself. That might be truth. It might be nature. It might be God. But it's always something bigger than his own reflection. That reverence. That's humility. And yet, there's still one more trait that binds all of this together. The shadow, the discipline, the purpose, the humility. It's the element that Jung considered both the most dangerous and the most necessary for individuation. It can destroy a man, or awaken him, and that's exactly where we'll go next. The shadow isn't a metaphor. It's not just your dark side, or the parts you don't like about yourself. In Jungian depth psychology, the shadow is everything you repress, deny, or disown, and it's alive. It's not just buried, it's active. It leaks through sarcasm, erupts in rage, hides in addictions, and whispers in your judgments of others. The superior man doesn't run from the shadow. He turns toward it. He studies it like a mirror that tells an uncomfortable truth. He knows that true power doesn't come from pretending to be good. It comes from integrating what's real, light and dark. The shadow isn't something to get rid of. It's something to understand, contain, and transmute. Most men fear their shadow. And no wonder, it's where their shame lives. Their envy, their lust, their rage, their hunger for control. But here's the paradox. What you repress owns you. What you face frees you. Jung taught that shadow integration is the core of individuation. Without it, a man becomes fragmented, a polished mask over a chaotic psyche. But when he brings the shadow into awareness, he becomes whole. Not perfect, whole. The superior man understands this. He doesn't try to be a saint. He tries to be honest. And that honesty, it sets him apart. It gives him depth, presence, and yes, danger. Because a man who knows his shadow cannot be easily manipulated. Let's be practical. How does one begin to face the shadow? Start with projection. Who triggers you most and why? What qualities in others annoy you disproportionately? Chances are, they reflect something unclaimed in yourself. Write it down. Track your patterns. Journal your emotional reactions. Notice recurring dreams. Pay attention to your fantasies. Not just the ones you enjoy, but the ones you fear. The shadow speaks in symbols. You don't figure it out like a puzzle. You feel your way into it through therapy, art, solitude, deep conversations, honest confession, and most of all, through radical self-inquiry. The goal isn't to fix the shadow, it's to meet it. And when you do, your life stops being a performance. It becomes a mythic journey. Now, here's the part most people miss. The shadow isn't just personal, it's collective. Men carry shadows for their culture, family, and ancestors. You may be living out patterns that didn't start with you, but end with you. This is why the superior man's work matters. He's not just doing it for himself. He's breaking cycles. He's healing unseen wounds. He's choosing consciousness over convenience. For generations he'll never meet. That's legacy. That's courage. That's manhood. Not marketed, but earned. Quietly, in the dark, through fire. And yet, even after all this, the discipline, the purpose, the humility, the shadow work, the path is never finished. Jung would be the first to say, the psyche is infinite. There's always more to discover, more to unlearn, more to awaken. And that's exactly where our story begins, not with certainty, but with curiosity. So let's take a breath and step into the deeper invitation. So now you've seen it. The real path of the superior man is not a straight line. It's a spiral. Discipline without ego, purpose without performance, humility without submission, and shadow, fully embraced, not feared. Jung didn't promise ease, he promised meaning. And maybe that's the real test. Are you willing to sacrifice comfort for clarity, applause for truth, noise for depth? What part of your shadow are you still hiding from? What would change in your life if discipline became sacred, not just functional? What kind of legacy are you leaving by the way you lead yourself? You don't need to become someone else. You need to remember who you are beneath the noise and reclaim him. If this message stirred something in you, good. That discomfort, that's the invitation. Don't scroll past it. Reflect, act, and start walking your own path, fully awake. Subscribe to Shadow and Light and turn on notifications, because this is just the beginning. We go deeper from here.